I'd like to call the Litchfield Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting to order at 7:05. Today is December 20th, 2021. I will start with roll call. We'll just go around the room if you want to state your name and whether you're a full member or an alternate member. John, I'll start with you.
John Brunel, full member.
Jerry Sorensen, alternate member.
John Devereaux, full member.
Laura Gandia, full member.
Dale Gilbo, full member.
Kevin Cormier, full member.
Kyle Durso, alternate member.
Jeff Blackwell, building inspector.
We do have our 5 full members here, so we will proceed with them as voting members. Our first case is case number 2021-12, variance from LDO section 1102 for the erection of a new structure, garage, and accessory dwelling unit. Name of applicant is Nicholas Kuchar. Owner of property is Aaron and Caitlin Lamorge. Location of property 57 Natticook Avenue, Litchfield, New Hampshire, 03052, map 9, lot 54. And who will be presenting this case? If you want to just come up here, just
Sure.
come on up.
So my name's Aaron Limoges. My wife, Caitlin Limoges. Our contractor, Nick, is supposed to be here to present.
Okay.
We're not sure exactly where he is at the moment. Just called him a minute ago to see if there's an update.
So would you like to wait and I can call the next case?
That would be great.
That would be great. Okay, so we're going to put you on pause and then it might be a little bit of the time to call the next case.
That's
Is that
okay.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
We
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Yep, so we're just going to put you on pause and we're going to go to case number 2021-13 is a special exception for 5,699 square feet of temporary wetland impact for equipment access and work-out placement and the replacement of one utility structure and optical ground wire for the 380 transmission line structure replacement project in the vicinity of Brickyard Drive. Name of applicant is the Public Service Company of New Hampshire. And who will be presenting? Come on up.
It's me.
My name is Logan Young. I'm with GZA Geoenvironmental. This is Elise Ward with Eversource.
Hi.
I have copies of the submittal that we sent to the town. Does anybody need that?
Oh, I think they gave us copies.
So as you described, we are here to talk about replacement of one utility structure on the 380 transmission line. This is off of Brickyard Drive and for approximately, looking for the number, but just over 5,000 square feet of temporary wetland impacts. This work is going to be the typical utility maintenance structure replacements that have probably been before this board multiple times. This is replacement of an existing wooden structure with a new, more resilient steel structure. And replacement of the existing static line on the structure with optical ground wire, OPGW. So that's the shield wire at the top of the structure. Those are the only proposed replacements for this project. So no changes to the existing number of structures, no changes to the line or the right-of-way as they currently exist. The work is being proposed to happen in, I believe, early spring of 2022. And all work will be done following the 2019 DES BMP manual. So that will cover erosion controls and management of construction following all those management practices. For the amount of proposed impacts here, this will be filed with the state under a utility statutory permit by notification only. That's still in draft. That has not been sent to the state yet. I think that's my overview. So what more information or any questions can I answer?
We'll have you go into the criteria in a minute. Anybody have questions?
I just had one question. I went through the proposal. It's pretty detailed. I see your details and everything. What I couldn't find anywhere, I saw temporary a lot, but how long is temporary? I guess I'm just trying to figure out what the construction schedule is.
So when you mean like the temporary impacts the
Right.
matting? I'm not sure what the proposed schedule would be. I don't know if you have
I
any
mean, I would say
information.
typically like 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months?
Yeah, depending on, because so this line goes from Merrimack and then into Londonderry. So there's other spots within Londonderry that will be working. So then
Yeah.
once everything's complete, then they'll do the restoration once, everything's been replaced at multiple locations.
So they replace everything in all 3 different towns at the same time.
Yeah, there's select locations. So there's some in Litchfield and then some in Londonderry.
Wetland, was it studied? Is it a vernal pool or is it a full wetland?
I don't know, you can ask.
Have the wetland studies been done on that
The
particular
wetlands were
piece?
delineated by GZA in October of
Yep.
2021. No evidence of vernal pools were found.
Okay.
And I think if you want the specific details, it was delineated as a Halstrand emergent, persistent, seasonally flooded wetland.
So 5,000 square feet is like an acre. It's
Mhm.
like an acre impacted, correct?
No.
No? It's less than an acre, right?
Less than
Because
an
it's
acre, yeah.
52,000 square feet. So it's like
Like
an
a-
eighth of an acre or less.
Yep.
Okay.
And you're replacing one wooden pole with a steel pole? And is there a difference in height?
At least can
Yeah, typically like 5 to
in there.
10 feet just to update to the current electric standards. I can get you the exact feet if you guys are interested in having that.
So the steel will be 5 feet tall?
Yeah.
And what color will the pole be?
It's we probably see it around town, the weathering steel. It's that brown colored
Okay.
steel. Yep.
And you mentioned the permit to the state that will be required before work can be.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Any other questions?
Well, I just had one follow-on question. Is 3 to 6 months, obviously, I'm assuming that there's maintenance of these, I guess, mitigating elements that you've designed into it. I mean, a lot of times you'll see a project start, it drags on, there's a delay, and next thing you know, you see a lot of the mitigating elements start to erode and disappear. So that's kind of follow on to my time. It's just that usually there's a plan that we're going to maintain it, and I'm assuming that that's it. That's why it's a question.
So there will be regular monitoring done by GZA during construction. So that's checking in on any erosion controls or temporary, impacts. The matting that's in there, making sure everything is working as it should. It's also coordination with the construction contractors to make sure they're following everything as they should. And any other permit requirements that need to be.
So your on-site quality control is tracking that as well as the construction. It's also tracking. I just wanted to make sure that was evident.
There are eyes on the project, yep, throughout.
Yeah, Eversource also has an internal construction rep that oversees the crews.
Great.
Any other questions? All right, if you wanted to just go through the criteria first,
Sure.
I think it's spelled out on that GZA letter.
So do you mean the like the individual
Yes.
aspects?
Section 1208.
Just make sure I'm. So would it just be helpful if I just read what's on the paper here for you? Okay. So A, the proposed use, construction, and or alteration shall be constructed in such a way that does not unduly restrict the flow of water. The project proposes temporary impact to one wetland system with the replacement of one structure and the OPGW, the optical ground wire. The proposed project has been designed to minimize temporary wetland impacts through the use of wetland matting. Matting will be temporarily placed in the wetland to provide appropriate work areas and prevent rutting. Best management practices include the installation and maintenance of erosion and sediment barriers will be used during construction and post-construction. The areas of temporary impact will be seeded and mulched with an herbaceous seed mix to establish permanent vegetative cover as necessary to promote restoration as nearly as possible to its original grade, condition, and vegetated state. Erosion and sediment barriers will be removed from the site after vegetation has been established. Next, it can be shown that the proposed use is not in conflict with any and all of the purposes and intentions listed in section 100.01 in this ordinance. The project proposes to maintain the 380 transmission line, which is located within existing and maintained right-of-ways. The utility structures will be replaced in their current alignment, and there is no expansion of the existing right-of-way or installation of new utility lines. Utility poles will be installed in proximity to the existing poles with minor differences in height and appearance. The poles will be approximately 5 to 10 feet higher than the existing utility structures due to updated National Electrical Safety Code requirements and are not anticipated to discourage the purposes and intentions listed in section 100.01 of the Litchfield zoning ordinance. Next, the use or activity proposed and its attendant impacts cannot be reasonably avoided. There are no alternatives with less impact that maintain the safety and reliability of the existing transmission line. The project has been designed to utilize existing historical access routes along the right-of-way where possible to minimize impacts to wetlands. The least damaging route and methodology have been selected, and that which is being proposed is the best practical alternative available. There are no alternatives with less impact that maintain the safety and reliability of the existing transmission line. The project has been designed to utilize existing historical access routes along the right-of-way where possible to minimize impacts to wetlands. Reasonable and acceptable impact mitigation measures have been incorporated where necessary and appropriate to minimize wetland loss or degradation. The access for the project has been cited to avoid wetlands to the greatest extent feasible. The proposed project has been designed to minimize temporary wetland impacts through the use of wetland matting. Matting will be temporarily placed in the wetland to provide appropriate work areas and prevent rutting. Best management practices that include the installation and maintenance of erosion and sediment barriers will be used during construction and post-construction. The areas of temporary impact will be seeded and mulched with an herbaceous seed mix to establish permanent vegetative cover as necessary to promote restoration as nearly as possible to its original grade, condition, and vegetated state. Erosion and sediment barriers will be removed from the site after vegetation has been established. No significant impacts on the aquatic habitat of rare or endangered species as listed by the state of New Hampshire or federal government will result. The project will include rare species BMPs as requested by the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. Prior to daily construction activities, timber matting will be reviewed by a monitor trained in wildlife identification, and observed turtles and snakes will be safely relocated out of the active work zone in similar nearby habitat. Observed turtles and snakes will be moved off construction access roads to limit and prevent mortality to turtles and snakes during construction, and will be reported to New Hampshire Fish and Game. Erosion control matting, if utilized, will consist of jute matting. Matting with plastic mesh will be avoided to limit unintentional mortality to snakes. Adequate erosion and sedimentation control methods appropriate to the use are incorporated as detailed by the current recognized BMPs. Stormwater Management and Erosion and Sediment Control Handbook for Urban and Developing Areas in New Hampshire, Rockingham County Conservation District, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, and Soil Conservation Service, August 1992, as amended. The access for this project has been cited to avoid wetlands to the greatest extent feasible. The proposed project has been designed to minimize temporary wetland impacts through the use of wetland matting. Matting will be temporarily placed in the wetland to provide appropriate work areas and prevent rutting. Best management practices that include the installation and maintenance of erosion and sediment barriers will be used during construction and post-construction. The areas of temporary impact will be seeded and mulched with an herbaceous seed mix to establish permanent vegetative cover as necessary to promote restoration as nearly as possible to its original grade, condition, and vegetated state. Erosion and sediment barriers will be removed from the site after vegetation has been established. And finally, state wetland permits as required are obtained. This project qualifies for a state statutory permit by notification, SPN, SPNs are valid for 1 year, and the SPN is currently scheduled to be submitted during January. This says 2021, but it meant to be 2022 due to the current construction schedule of the project.
Anybody have any questions on the criteria? And as part of our process, did you go to the Conservation Commission? Did you meet with them?
We have spoken with the
Okay, and could you just tell me what happened during those conversations?
they from my I wasn't the one there, but
Okay.
my understanding was they gave full support for what we presented.
Yep, so I do have, I did get a letter from Chairman Lepore from the Conservation Commission saying that they were fine with the project. And then also it was sent to the planning board as part of our zoning process, and they had no comments. And that was reviewed by the planning board on, I think, December 7th. So James B. doesn't see any need for the planning board to comment. James B. makes a motion to inform the ZBA that the board has no comment on this case. Ron S. seconds the motion. The motion passes 5-0-0. So that was from the planning board, December 7th, 2021 meeting. Matt Lepore did send me correspondence saying that that the Conservation Commission had no issue with the request. So I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there anybody in favor of the request for a special exception that would like to speak? Anybody opposed or with questions that would like to speak? All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Any further questions for the applicant? All right, somebody want to make a motion to close public input?
I'll make a motion to close public input.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so we are now deliberating. Any questions, thoughts?
That seems pretty straightforward.
So-
My only question was, I'm not sure I understand why they had to come back in front of the ZBA. It's a existing right away already today with all the rules that are in place. So do they have to come in front of the ZBA every time they make a change out there?
When they want to impact the wetlands,
Yeah,
right?
to impact that.
So that would,
Didn't you just do a similar project down on Pass Conway?
Yeah.
Did we hear that?
Yes, we did.
Yep.
Do we?
Yes.
So when there's, and Jeff, correct me if we're wrong, if there's any time there's impacts to wetlands that requires a special exception, then we
Right.
have to come
Okay.
here. And as part of our special exception process, it goes to the Conservation Commission, the planning board, and Jeff as the health officer, who he had no concerns about the project as well.
Yeah, and just FYI, that supporting documentation was not uploaded into the portal, so it's not here for at least my view anyway,
For,
for this case. So the notice from the conservation or the planning board, there was no note in that in the portal itself.
I'm not sure why.
Okay, fine.
Well, can we get it scanned in for the
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, and
we
I
should.
have it,
Yeah.
so, and I believe the town has it, might have not have made its way to you.
Michelle probably. Yeah, I didn't post it, so Michelle was doing it, I think. We'll fix that. All right, thanks.
So we do have the criteria that he went through. Do we want to go through them individually, or is everybody all set?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay. Would we want to put any conditions or restrictions on it if we were to grant it?
I would ask that I be contacted prior to the start of construction and then upon completion. So I
Makes
can
sense.
observe conditions before they get started and then also witness that everything has been restored.
That makes sense.
Anybody else have any conditions? I do have some, I mean, he has it in his presentation, so we can say as presented, but I just want to be sure that the areas of temporary impact will be seeded and mulched, as he stated, to promote restoration as nearly as possible. Okay, do you want to make sure that that's done? And for F, prior to daily construction activities, I would like everything in F to make sure that that's done in G. So if the board's comfortable, we can just say as presented in this November 9th, 2021 letter and add in the conditions that Jeff has. If the board's agreeable to that as a condition.
Yeah, the only amendment would be needed in H to show the proper 2022
22.
date.
Correct.
So we could say that as amended.
All right, does somebody want to make that motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion.
All right.
So I'll move to accept the variance, the
It's a-
special exception.
Mhm.
Yep, I always get that wrong. For the case 2021-13, Kurt Nelson representing Eversource. Based on the presented material with the amended date for section H and for the notification of the town of the prior to and at completion of the project.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion, any questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining, so that passes 5-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, we're going to call back up. Case number 2021-12, variance from LDO section 1102 for the erection of a new structure, garage, and accessory dwelling unit. Name of applicant, Nicholas Kuchar, owner of property, Aaron and Caitlin Limoges, location of property, 57 Natticook Avenue, Litchfield, New Hampshire, 03052, map 9, lot 54. And who will be presenting?
Nicholas Kuchar from Crossroads Contracting.
Do you want to present?
Yes, please.
There you go. Just plug it in that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have anything additional other than whatever.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Just brought everything digital today.
That's fine.
Thank you, though.
Just trying to get out of that job.
Sorry.
You greatly appreciate it, John.
It's fine.
Okay, you can begin.
Okay. So I'll start with the 5 questions. So the variance will not be contrary to public interest because, Well-
I'm sorry to interrupt.
yeah, sorry.
Just present the project and why we're here, sort of big picture it, and then you can drill down.
Oh,
to-
sure. Okay. So they'd like to build an in-law addition or an ADU off the side of off the right-hand side of the house. After doing some research and working with the building inspector, realized that the flood maps had changed over the years and now encompasses the entire house. So as you can see, the third bay up on the screen, the third bay is part of the new addition. And then the in-law addition, we're trying to get that to sit behind it so not to be as visible from the street. But that entire area is in the 100-year floodplain.
Is there an existing garage there right now?
Yep. The two bays on the
bays,
left are
okay.
existing. And that the dormer on top of the 2-car garage is also existing today.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the basics of why we're here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the questions, the variance will not be contrary to public interest because the proposed addition will not threaten the public health, safety, or welfare and will not contribute to any additional flooding within the 100-year floodplain. The spirit of the ordinance is preserved because the addition will not result in additional flooding in the 100-year floodplain by not raising the grade higher than it is existing today and installing openings per R322.2.1 in the residential code that will allow for the basement to fill with water during any of the 100-year flood periods. Substantial justice would be done because it would allow the customer to use their land without impacting the public. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished because the proposed addition will increase this home value, this particular home's value, and in kind would increase the value of the home surrounding it. And number 5, literal enforcement of this provision of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship because going with A, and really this property is one of only a few in the neighborhood that is within the 100-year floodplain, which has recently increased, placing this house entirely within the floodplain. The ordinance is to prevent increased flooding, which this addition does not do. Therefore, we feel it's a reasonable request. And again, just restating, the plan is to install flood vents inside the foundation itself, and the grade directly around the addition will not be affected. Any additional dirt that we dig out of the hole will be put in the truck and hauled off site. So we don't plan on raising the grade.
Jeff, for the R zoning, I noticed on section 1108. It says that he also, if he wants a variance, he also needs to prove A through F.
So do you want me to go through each of these?
So
or-
I'm just,
Yes.
want to make sure that you and I are on the same page.
Yes. correct.
And are you prepared to go through that section of our zoning in addition to the 5 criteria that you just went through? For our zoning for Litchfield, you also have to prove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or discuss 6 more points.
I wasn't prepared to, but I will do my best.
Okay. And does the board
kind
understand
of
what's
already-
happening?
I feel like
Everybody
you repeated
understand
some of
what's
it.
Oh, okay.
So,
happening?
yeah.
Yep, I can do this. All right, so item A, the variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threat to the public safety, or extraordinary public expense. Again, by adding the flood vents in the foundation and by not raising the grade, we certainly won't be causing any additional flooding that wouldn't already be happening. So I feel like we're meeting the criteria of A. B, that if the requested variance is for activity within the designated regulatory floodway, no increase in flood levels during the base flood discharge will result. Again, I think those 2 things cover that. C, the variance is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief. Yeah, I don't think we're trying to ask for anything above and beyond just what is absolutely needed to get the addition and the foundation in the ground for the addition, if I'm understanding that question correctly. D, the zoning board of adjustment shall notify the applicant in writing that the insurance of the variance to construct below the base flood level will result in increased premium rates for flood insurance of up to as high as $25 to $100 of the insurance coverage, and such construction below the base flood level increases the risk to life and property. I have the owners of the home here with me today, so I would say that satisfies that. The written notification shall be maintained with a record of all variance actions. It certainly can be. The town shall maintain a record of all variance actions, including the justification for its issuance, and report the issuance of any variance to FEMA Federal Insurance Administrator in its annual or biannual report.
That would be you, Jeff, that would do that?
I'll say that again.
Says the town shall maintain.
Oh, yes,
There you go.
yep. That's correct.
That'd be something that you would do.
That would be, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The board have any questions?
I just have some clarifying questions. You talked about foundation sort of drainage.
Yep.
Just to clarify that the addition does not have a basement?
It will have a crawl space
It's a crawl
underneath,
Space for.
Yeah.
Okay.
but no
So there's not a
mechanicals.
livable basement?
Correct.
What is the LSA markings on this map? Do you know? Trying to figure out what's this map showing. It's the shaded areas around the house.
Oh, landscaped areas.
Landscaped areas?
Yeah.
And it shows this, the same map shows a base flood elevation line that proceeds, it essentially proceeds through the proposed addition. I'm not, is that the 100-year flood line that you're referring to?
Yeah, so there's two lines in there. There's the zone AE, which
Yeah.
is I believe from the FEMA maps, and then the second one that you're referring to is the an elevation line that is supposed to represent what they were after in the FEMA maps.
Okay.
That was done on site by the surveyor.
Yep.
So the FEMA one kind of cuts straight through the house,
Yeah.
which they're trying to give general guidance as to where that's going to go, and that the second line is the more accurate line of where it actually is, as far as the floodplain.
Okay. And just for my own situation, is the, say, east side closer to Natticook, the higher elevation side, or is it the other side, the west side, the higher elevation side?
Towards the driveway and the street is the high side,
Higher side,
and the
okay.
backyard's the low side.
Gotcha, thank you.
Any other questions?
But just a point of clarification too, to make sure I
Sure.
understand. It actually shows the base flood elevation at 117, what is that, point 0.9. And then you're proposing finished floor, the same as existing residence as 121, right? So that'd be 4 feet above that. That's how I'm reading the map.
Yeah, the finished floor would be above, but the foundation would be
Right.
below. Yep. Yeah, so any living space would be above it.
That's where you had the vents that you were talking about for, on the foundation. I thought you mentioned that you had something.
Oh,
happening.
so the vents, there'll be some flood vents where they'll naturally be closed, but there's a device inside it that if there's any flooding, there's a little float inside that raises and allows the vent to open and allows flood waters to just flood right into the basement space.
Flood out, right?
Yeah.
sorry?
Flood stewed, floods out.
Yep, correct. Yep.
And when I was looking at the FEMA maps, I found this. Are you familiar with that? It shows,
Not that one in particular, no.
so it looks like all property along the Merrimack has the same flood restrictions.
Is a couple of the houses, the neighbors up the street, there's a few of them that are involved in it too. Yep.
In this, like the shaded X, like flood zone. Can you explain what that is? I think that was on your map.
Yeah, he has it as zone AE and zone X was
Right.
just with the, not sure I fully understand that 100%, but it's the delineation between whether you're in the 100-year floodplain or not.
Like that, when I looked at FEMA, moderate flood hazard areas are zone X, which is shaded. So that's a moderate flood compared to, that's a little bit higher than others. It's not an area of minimal flood. This particular property is in an area of moderate flood. Is that correct?
I believe that to be accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, part of that area, it really starts at 53 Natticook. Along the back edge, right along the Merrimack River, is where they're all, the back part of almost every property is in the floodplain.
Right, that's.
But
kinda
once
what-
you get to 53, which is 2 houses up, that's where it kind of swings out a little bit further away from the river and probably encompasses maybe 3 properties.
Yeah.
Or the better part of those properties.
So criteria 1 talks about the health and safety.
Mhm.
So the safety precautions that you're recommending for this project is the vents. Is there anything else that you're recommending for safety?
I don't, no, I can't think of anything else that would be required. Again, and just not raising the grade farther than what it is today. So just making sure anything that we're digging out of the hole ends up in a truck and going off site, not getting spread out.
Any other questions?
And just to be clear again, sorry if you've hit this point before, but the base flood 117.9 that was put in by you based on your surveyed contour.
Yes.
In the larger dash line, that's your FEMA line.
Yeah, the FEMA map gives you a general idea of where it is, and the other one's just more specific.
My understanding is that the FEMA looks at it from like a much broader sense of
Yes.
the Merrimack rather than more refined areas.
You know, honestly, we're kind of hoping that you can see where our line goes away from the FEMA one a little bit more. You know, fingers were crossed that the addition was going to be out of it, but
Yeah,
it is
you
where
gotta
it
look
is.
at it, right?
Yep.
I did visit the site and looked at it, and it's hard to see on a piece of paper, everything looks flat, but
Sure.
it's definitely sloping.
Yeah.
And my opinion is, by the time you got up to that level of 121, you'd probably be in a 300-year flood. It just seems to me that there's reasons, you can build in floodplains. I mean, that's not, but you have to have the right, design or pieces. So
Yep.
fortunately in this case, the site works with you, the contours work with you. So I didn't see, I saw that. And then the additional, like we talked about, the venting of the crawl space, as long as it's not livable space too, that's a plus. The only thing that it really talks about is just the verification of insurance. The whole point of the insurance is the house gets flooded out. It's a total loss, and then it just sits there for years and years and years. So I think that my comment is that there should be some sort of documentation of the flood insurance as part of the addition and everything to make sure that's obtained along with it.
And the homeowner's here today and can
Yep.
speak to that, but I know they have already obtained flood insurance for the house because of the existing, where the flood line goes through the house as it is.
Right.
So it wouldn't be anything new to them.
No, I don't think I just want to make sure it was documented as part of that's probably the most important requirement, one of the
Yep.
most important requirements. And it's usually, I don't want to say forgotten, but it's the updated policies never occur
Sure.
and things like that. So we make sure the updated policies were submitted along with that.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there anybody in favor of the application that would like to speak? Yep, come on up.
I'm just saying in favor.
Would you like to speak? No.
Sure, I can come up. Aaron Lamoche. Nice to see you again. So just in response to the insurance question, we do have flood insurance on the current property. We have already contacted our insurance company and let them know that we will be building this. They have it on record, and once the construction is complete, excuse me, we will be increasing that policy to make sure that that's included. If that needs to be on record in some way, then we can certainly do that.
Thank you. Any questions?
Other than that, just want to thank everyone for your time. And this project just means a lot to us and our family. My wife, Caitlin, and her parents are sitting behind us here, and they're going to be the ones moving into the house. They're currently living with us as we go through this process. And we're very much looking forward to getting this project started. So thank you very much.
Anybody have any questions for him?
Just one thing. In Jeff's letter, which you wrote him, you talk about the floodplain, but there's also this last section, conditional use permit. Is this are we going to treat this detached?
No, that
Detached,
is,
that's
that
gonna
is
be
for the
treated
planning
separate?
board.
Okay, that's okay.
Right.
All right.
So based on,
So we're just acting on the floodplain. Right?
correct.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else in favor of the application that would like to speak? Anyone in opposition or with questions? I do have one question. Does anybody remember the Mother's Day flood that took place over in Natticook that year?
Absolutely do.
Okay, and that was kind of coming, I think, from right where this is, right?
I'm not actually sure of that side of the flooding. I knew the Charles Bancroft side was the part that I've seen.
Okay,
It was
because I remember
pretty
Piscataway.
extensive.
Yeah, like that whole golf course on the other side of Natticook was flooded.
Flooded, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was well above the Q100.
Yeah, it
Yeah, it
was.
was.
Right, so we have no more questions for the applicant. I'll take a motion to close public input.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, that's 5-0-0. All right, we're going to go into deliberations. Questions, comments, concerns, thoughts?
That was pretty well covered.
I have concerns. My concern is, I think we have the floodplain. I know it changed, but I think the whole purpose with this 1 and 2, like the spirit, the purpose, is to ensure development on land within the district will not endanger the health, safety, and welfare of the occupants of the land within the floodplain or the public during time of flood. That development will not result in increased flood levels during the base flood discharge and encourage the most appropriate use of land within the community. So I do have some issues with 1 and 2. I know it's above and I know the vents underneath, but I'm still not convinced that 1 and 2 are meant.
So I just feel like 1 and 2 are when net new construction. There's already an existing home there. It's already impacting.
It
How
is,
much
but
more is this going to impact it?
well, it is impacting it more.
Not the way the lines are showed from my perspective.
Really?
It feels like the FEMA one goes right through the house anyway,
It does.
so it's
But-
already impacted.
But if you zoom in on that,
Yeah, I
you
can.
can, you got the 2 lines.
Yeah.
Right?
You got this line, which is the FEMA line, I believe, right? If I read that right.
Yeah.
And then this is the line you actually surveyed.
Correct.
Okay. I don't see it.
Okay.
I don't see it as an issue. That's from
Okay.
my perspective.
Nope, I'm just, bringing it.
If it was a net new home, I would probably be totally against it altogether. But
Yep.
it's a home that's already existing in there. It's already experienced what it's experienced.
My concern is by adding that in, you're increasing
So
the,
So if I could speak to that a little bit. So where the major concerns usually are with this is if you're actually raising the entire elevation of the site. So what they're proposed is all the material that's dug up for the actual foundation will be removed from the site. So in essence, you're just having the exact same elevation through that site. Nothing to change. The vents in the foundation will allow whatever water is coming in
To drain out.
as it comes
Pass
up
through.
to come in. So it's not going to be displaced elsewhere. So the concern is you're displacing, well, you think about it in terms of an entire site, right? If the entire golf course, if the entire Natticook Ave were to be raised up, we'd be pushing that water further out, possibly into other homes and other properties. But with what they're doing, that elevation of the actual grade is not being affected. And the volume of the crawl space and the foundation isn't going to occupy any water.
Because the water.
So the water elevation will be what the water elevation is, and it's not going to be pushed off property.
It's not restricting the channel. If you're looking at it like a channel,
Yeah.
they're not like cutting off part of the channel, I think is.
Yeah. I mean, if you had a solid basement with no way for the water to come in, you would be displacing that amount of water.
Right, because it would have no place to go.
It would have no place to go.
But even with the vents, right, there's still some measure of water that would be displaced, right? Because the whole side of the foundation isn't a vent.
Correct. Right. So it would be the volume of concrete that is below the base flood elevation.
Is it a slab or is this like a slab frost wall footing?
Yeah, they'll have an unfinished slab. But honestly, anything that the walls themselves would displace would probably be taken up by the basement because the slab is actually going to be lower than the ground a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what the measurements on that would be, but I would think it would be an equal volume so that they really would result in a net zero.
Should we know that before we make a decision? Like more information on that? No. Okay. And my other concern is 5, the special conditions of the property compared to others in the area. I don't see that it's different from others in the area. So I would struggle with number 5. Because I think all those properties going along the back, along the Merrimack River have the same restrictions regarding FEMA. So I don't see how it's unique to any other ones in that area.
Looking at the FEMA maps, I said there's basically 3. It might be a 4th property that are affected. And they're all the ones right down at the end, 53, 55, 57, and maybe a touch of 59.
Yeah, just because when I was looking at this, I have it all down.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, like I said, it swings out away from the river.
Yeah, because I think that's, the road's going like
Yeah.
that.
The hardship one always gets me. I can see it on both sides, but if another property came forward with the same request, the same considerations of the property and deal with it, I'd have a hard time to say no.
You would have a
I
hard
would have a
time.
hard time to say no, because I think that the hardship part of it, I look at the hardship side of it, you got a family who's trying to utilize their property to take care of their family. That's the hardship part.
But that's not the
I understand.
legal basis for
I
hardship for
understand that.
us. So
Don't be like that. Don't say this. I understand.
So
I got it.
our hardship is what makes it unique. Like this property has to be unique from other properties in the area. That's the hardship.
Well, every
The
property,
line runs, does that make it unique? Where you just have the back part of it that's really an issue?
I don't know how you didn't see other properties in the area. I know as far as limitation for FEMA.
Yeah.
All those properties kind of along the same road have similar restrictions.
But fitting the part of unique, I mean, you're talking about just the back part of the addition. How many of these other houses have, where does the line compare to where they are or not?
That would be
Right.
for the
Same
applicant
siting
to
or
prove
anything.
to us, not for us to figure that out.
I think the flood lines themselves create uniqueness in this property. So that's why it's unique. But we debate on whether there is a hardship associated with that uniqueness of this property. I think, if I speak correctly for you.
No, and yeah, like that's my struggle, how is this property different from other properties in the area? And is it different because, as Kevin was saying, because the flood line crosses it differently from where it might cross the other one?
Yeah,
I don't know if that's enough
that's unique.
for me because they all have flood lines. So if you use that rationale, then every property would be unique because
It's
every
possible.
property has.
Well, it depends. I mean, if
In that
it's in
neighborhood,
the
yes,
house or
it's
not, or
possible.
part of the house, like, I mean, you're talking about just percentage wise, just that back part. I mean,
No, I mean, that's for, that's why what we're
That's
talking
why we're
about.
here.
Right, that's why we talk
You
about
know.
it, correct?
well, you're right. Every site is, every property is unique. And that's
Exactly.
why I went out there, because you can't see it unique here. If you go out and look at it, then you can see, okay, I see the flow. You can kind of see that. And then you look at the neighbors and they're sitting a lot lower and like, well, yeah, that wouldn't work over there, or this, they'd have to do something different. Again, it's not, you can't build in a floodplain. It's that you have to build properly in a floodplain.
Any other discussion? We can go through the 5 points and then we can move forward. So the first one is granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest. I think I'll be in the minority. I would say that granting the variance would be contrary to the public interest, but I think I'm going to be outnumbered, so I'll let somebody else take that lead.
I think the proposed addition will not threaten public health or safety as written. I think it will not be contrary to the public interest
And why?
because it doesn't change the floodplain throughout the neighborhood. There's no effect on it. So it doesn't worsen the neighborhood, and it doesn't change their own susceptibility to flooding.
Like, how do we know that?
That's my opinion.
I know, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I'm just the how, like, do we feel like the applicant gave us enough information that we can actually say that? Like, that's where I'm struggling. Like, I'm not,
Well, I think our building inspector provided some insight that helps me say that that's the case. It doesn't impact.
okay.
Do we want to vote on each one?
No, I think we get the consensus and we'll do it at the end.
Gotcha.
The spirit of the ordinance would or not be observed. Again, I'm going to be in the minority here, so I'm going to refrain.
To me, it's very similar to one, is that the spirit of the ordinance is observed because it doesn't violate the spirit of the ordinance. It's not creating it's not changing the living conditions of the house.
Anybody else want to add anything to that agrees with John?
I would just say, from my understanding of what they provided with the flood vents and everything, you're not restricting the channel,
The flow of water.
the flow of water with the proposed addition. So, in my opinion, it would, that's what the spirit of the ordinance is trying to get at.
The spirit of the ordinance is to make sure that you're making any kind of proper mitigating element to where you're affecting in the floodplain. So if those are, the spirit of the ordinance is met by these additional, not just standard construction, these additional construction pieces, that's how I would meet the spirit of the ordinance.
And should we be concerned that it's not a minimal flood area, it's a moderate flood hazard because it's a zone X and it's shaded? Does that concern anybody? No?
Already living there.
That's kind of my point. Is
If they
that
weren't
there-
living there, it'd be a different conversation.
If it
Well,
were-
it was changed. The flood map was
The
changed
home already exists.
When was the
Okay.
flood map changed?
at 2009.
So before 2009, what was the effect of this piece of property? How much did it change?
We can ask the
You
CP.
know how much it changed from 2009 to 2021?
Do you mind pulling it back up?
I think it was 2005 was the FEMA map, and then I think in 2009 it changed.
Okay.
So the original plot plan showed, and I guess I'll say that, but just going off of memory based off the original plot plan had it listed, kind of like it does here. It showed it somewhere in here. So it didn't change a lot. It was still, 50% of the yard, but at that point, it did not go through.
But it wasn't
At
affecting the
that,
house.
at that point, it didn't affect the house, or it probably wouldn't have affected the addition then, right?
Correct. At that point, it was behind.
So now from 2005 to 2009, based on studies from FEMA, they, in my opinion, determined an increase in, let's say, risk in quotations for flooding on that property, which is a concern of mine. Nobody else has that concern.
They already have the risk.
Yeah, that's.
I think we're
kind of the way I
increasing
look
the
at
risk.
If you deny it, you're denying them the right to utilize their property to the fullest potential.
No, we're not. We're just denying them a right to a variance.
To utilize the property for its fullest potential.
So every time we deny a variance, we deny property
Full
owner.
potential. That's my opinion sometimes. Yep.
Well, there's some cases where there's an obvious, we've seen some, I've seen some earlier where that's the way they wanted it. And it was an easy fix to get out of even requiring the variance, but they were firm and no, this is what I want. And that's where I would say that they're denying themselves a full use of the property.
I mean, I
So-
could also say, when you buy a property abutting the river, you have some expectation that there's limitations to the property that you're purchasing.
But aren't there other areas of the town that are in a floodplain that are not abutting the river?
Yes.
Like Cutler Road, for instance, where I live. Cutler
Yeah,
Road is in the 100-year floodplain.
With what I've come across so far, there's very, very few where the floodplain actually encompasses majority of a piece of property, of a single family residence
So you're saying
property.
there's
So,
very few instances within the town?
yeah, because of a previous request in the same neighborhood, got me started looking at this, and then with the second request for construction, I looked at it even further. So, I mean, looking around and looking at, every time I get a building permit application, I look at the wetlands and the floodplains in that, for that property. So I've seen very few across the town where the majority of the properties encompassed with or included in the floodplain. And of course, that could change based on actual survey.
Yep.
But that's what the maps, that's what the FEMA maps are showing right now. So, I mean, there is a number of them where the back end of the property, 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever it is. And of course it varies, but, where the floodplain affects the backside of a piece of property or something. And you can see the way some of the streets have been laid out so that they have avoided some of those areas.
Yep.
So it's kind of in between neighborhoods type of thing, so.
All right. So we're going to move on to number 3. Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice because, and I would say, again, I'll be in the minority. I say it would not because I have concern for flooding for other neighboring properties and for the homeowner themselves. Again, I believe I'm in the minority, so somebody wants to take the lead on number 3. Unless I'm not in the minority.
So unfortunately, I have the same opinion as the first two, is that substantial justice is done by granting the variance because it allows the homeowner to build on his property without really impacting the flooding in the neighborhood. There's zero impact. So granting the variance allows them to leverage their property without impacting their neighbors. So I say, because of that, I say that substantial justice would be done by granting the variance.
Okay. For the following reasons, the values of surrounding properties would or would not be diminished.
I don't,
Won't be diminished.
yeah, I don't think there's any impact to property
Yeah.
values.
And why, John?
The additions will raise the value of that property, which will then raise the value of the rest of the properties. And also allow the property to be utilized even more.
I don't think it changes the surrounding properties either way.
Yeah.
Except just, maybe the neighborhood looks better, but it doesn't really change your value, I don't think. I think the value is the value.
Anybody else?
Did you have a difference opinion?
I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
I was just trying, I like the way you put it.
Number
Oh, Did you
5.
see him look down at you? Did
What's that?
you see him look down at you when you said that?
No, you can look down. It's okay.
I definitely did not.
John said I did. I'm just like trying to.
Every time she looks at me, she can just let one of these.
Well,
like this,
because when I have my glasses on, I
Yeah,
see
I
you
had the same
differently.
problem.
Yeah, see? It's not looking down. Thank you.
Just
Thank
figure out what
you.
scene that's all it is.
That's why I took them off, so you wouldn't think that.
My
Number-
eyes are diminished.
yes.
The older we get, the harder it is.
Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. Again, I have issues with, I don't think it's unique from other properties in the area. So I don't think there are special conditions. So I would say that there is a fair and substantial relationship between the purpose to prevent flooding and applying and to apply that particular zoning provision to this property. I think we should. But again, I think I'm in the minority, so. Anyone?
The general purpose of the ordinance is to minimize or eliminate building in a floodplain, I think. And I think that the building is already in a floodplain. So I don't think it's contrary to the ordinance because it's in most sense, or at least in my point of view, it doesn't apply. But it does apply because of the fact that there's building going on in a floodplain. In this particular case, the house is already in a floodplain.
And my comment again is you can build in a floodplain. Floodplain doesn't automatically exclude any kind of construction. It just requires you to account for the additional.
And not make it
So-
worse for your neighbors.
Right.
Right.
Well, our zoning does preclude building within a floodplain. That's why you have to get a variance because you're looking to be exempt from it. So we say,
Well,
The general practice does not preclude you from doing it. That's-
well, wait, I'm just going to read to you what we're talking about. So everybody, so permitted uses is any use which is permitted in the underlying zoning district which does not involve the erection of any new building or structure. The permit, no, that's not what I wanted to look for.
so when I read purpose and authority, the floodplain district is enacted to ensure development on the land. So this is development on the land. Within the district will not endanger health, safety, welfare of the occupants, but we're going through on a case-by-case basis. That development will not result in increased flood levels during a base flood discharge and to encourage the most appropriate use of the land within the community. So I read that as you can build in a floodplain, you just have to do it right.
Yeah, and you can't make it worse for your neighbors, essentially.
You know, you can't even do, even in a floodplain, you can't make it worse for your neighbor.
Yeah.
You can't build a structure on your site that floods your neighbor out, even if you're not in a floodplain. If you're discharged, so EPA would actually require you to keep all of that runoff on your own
On your
property. Yeah, you wouldn't even be able to cross properties.
So I think it's a good ordinance, even under these circumstances, because it's making sure that you do the right thing, or we do the right thing.
And how is it unique, just so we have it for the record, if people believe that the property is unique from other property in the area?
The way I look at it is this property is unique because of its, the building associated with the floodplain lines. that makes the property unique.
Anybody else have anything they want to add to that? Jeff, I had a question. I thought I read somewhere that the reason why they were here was because they,
So, well, part of it, yes.
were adding an addition, right?
There's a section here called substantial improvement that if exceeds 50% of the market value of the structure. And so my determination on that was I didn't think the addition actually exceeds 50% of the market value of the structure. That's 1101.26. And then they also talk about construction, and the construction standards are identified in the ordinance as well, and to follow the different standards. So that's 1106. So again, I mean, it's really, every site's unique. I mean, every site's unique. But that's not the intent of a unique site. If there was a condition that was unavoidable or something, that's what they're referring to as unique.
All right, anybody else have anything else they want to add? And if the board was to grant the variance, are there any conditions that the board thinks should be added? I know there's something about insurance.
Yeah, I was going to say, per my previous comment, there should be some sort of requirement to resubmit an updated insurance policy at the completion of the project.
And Jeff, do we normally do that? Is that something that the town keeps record of, or that's something that we wouldn't do?
I've not done it. I've not heard of it being done, but
You could take the one copy, attach it to the building record we have. So, I mean, that's the record. But submitting it every year, I don't think we have a mechanism to do that.
Well, that's, right, I don't know what type of.
I don't know if I wasn't replying to every year. I just, what it is once you get the initial effort, then it usually seems to carry.
Yeah.
But it's the initial effort. You know, people get to the end, hey, the project's done. Whew. And this is kind of, I call it the project closeout type stuff, closing the project out.
You have to do an occupancy permit for the ADU once, if that is approved and passed, right?
correct. Right.
So when you get the occupancy permit, have this attach it to that same record and keep it in the system for the one time, right? To that cover that one requirement.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. That's okay.
And I know you mentioned too that it's going to need to comply with 1106.02 because it is in that AE zone.
Right.
So I would think that might be an appropriate condition.
Would we have to define that, or it just comes out of our building ordinances in general? So the
Right, yes,
inspector
we'd
would
have
make
to
sure
comply
it
with that anyhow, so we don't need to put it.
the building code
would
is
require.
going to cover the exact.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just saying, do we have to put that in as a requirement?
No, no. And then so after the 5 criteria, he also was required to meet this one, that the variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, or extraordinary public expense. Does the board feel that he met that one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. And that if the requested variance is for activity within a designated regulatory floodway, no increase in flood levels during the base flood discharge will result.
Yep.
But he's not doing anything in a regulatory floodway, right, Jeff?
I don't think he's in a.
Right, because the floodway is,
Well, I don't-
right?
yeah, he's on the floodway,
He's
right?
on
He's
the
in the
floodway.
floodplain.
Right, so he doesn't have to. So even though we said he met it, he doesn't have to meet it, so that doesn't apply to him.
That's right.
Yeah, correct.
Do we get extra credit? Do
What's that?
we get extra credit for that question?
You don't. No, you get no credit. That the variance is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief. And the next one is that we shall notify the applicant in writing, which the town will do, that the issuance of a variance to construct below the base flood level will result in an increase in premium rates for flood insurance up to amounts as high as 25 to 100, of insurance coverage, and such construction below the base flood level increases risks to life and property. The written notification shall be maintained with a record of all variance actions. And Jeff, is that something that you would write to the applicant and let him know?
I can, yes, sure.
I don't think that would come from the board.
When you
Actually,
grant
it would-
the,
it
when
would.
you build the, when
Yeah,
you grant the
so
building
we would
permit.
put that as part of our decision and just give that to you.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
And then the town will maintain a record of all variance actions, including the justification for its issuance and the report, the issuance of any variance to FEMA's federal insurance administrator. All right. So for, what about the vents? Is that something that we need to put as a condition, or is that something that's part of the building
No,
code?
that's
That would be part of, yeah, it will be part of the building permit.
Okay, so you don't want that as a condition here.
It can be, but only to the extent I would say is, I think this is part of showing that it's not going to affect the floodplain, the flood level.
So do you think it would serve the town
So-
well to put that as a condition or not?
Yes.
Anybody have some wording for that understands that terminology?
Proper installation of flood vents.
Well, yeah, I would just say the proper installation of flood mitigation in the new construction.
Have you seen those vents before?
No.
I've never seen them.
He's
Never
actually,
seen
he's yeah. He's got him.
You have a design on that?
Yeah.
Put them up like. Yeah, smart. It's manufactured by Smart Vent.
Is that a common practice?
For building in the floodplain, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And they've already had some. They've had their their vents evaluated for proper ratings as well for his code book compliance.
Okay.
So it's a actual rated vent.
So we just have that one condition then, the proper installation of flood mitigation measures per construction to the satisfaction of the building inspector. Any other conditions? Anyone want to make a motion? I'll make the motion. I will make a motion. I'm not going to vote for it, but I'm going to make the motion in case number 2021-12 to grant the applicant's request for a variance to section LZO 1100 for the erection of a new structure, which is a garage and accessory dwelling unit in the floodplain with the condition that there is proper installation of flood mitigation measures to the satisfaction of the building inspector.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Me? And abstained, so it's 4-1-0. There you go. All
Very much.
right, communication and other business?
Thanks.
Anything? Same thing
Thank
right again? I'm taking these off.
That's okay.
John has made me completely self-conscious now.
It wasn't me.
I didn't mean to.
Well, you did it to me, so now I don't feel as bad. Any other communication of the business? Jeff, do you know if we have anything coming up for January by any chance? Or it's still a little early. I can't remember when our deadline is. But...
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
I love the fact that we have a full board and extras. This is really cool. We went through a bunch of meetings where we barely had 3 people here. So this is great. Thank you so much for joining us.
A new member.
And thank you, John, for signing back up.
Being scowled at, I'm not sure I like to be here anymore. With regards to the clerk position, we have 2 decisions. Who's writing those decisions up and submitting them? I think we're having the town do that now, right?
No, I've been doing that
Okay.
now. But typically the clerk does it if you want to do
Well,
that.
I was gonna ask you, why don't we do this one?
So I'll do this one.
Share with me so I can see
Sure.
what you're doing from a format perspective, and then I'll try to build a form for it, and we'll kind of
Sure.
make it more.
Nice.
Absolutely. And we are very behind on our minutes. I think the last minutes that are on the website are March.
That's probably because I haven't seen them, so I'll get with Michelle. And see
Right.
what
And
she
I think
has.
we haven't voted on some too for the last couple of months as well. So I don't know where we're at because there was a time where we didn't have meetings and
Yep,
stuff was
yeah.
a little,
Yeah, so we
unsettled.
could vote on them January, right?
So,
Well, you're gonna have short memories, so it'll be what it is, right? Because you don't have all the
but
members
at least we
there.
can, at least get draft
Yeah.
minutes posted to the board.
Yeah, so that's, I
Website.
guess, another question. Do you want the drafts posted before approval or just?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because we have, per statute, 5 business days to kind of get those minutes
Mhm.
ready. I mean, ready, we can have them here, but I think it's more transparent to have them up on the
Yeah.
website for people to see.
Yeah, I just remind the public that the requirement is to have them available for public viewing here.
Here,
There's no requirement for us to publish it.
On the website, that's
right.
We
correct.
do that because we want to do that, right? It's easier,
We
but
do.
I'll get with Michelle and get the whole backlog and get those posted
Okay.
up.
Nice, thank you.
Thanks.
Can you also get me access to the portal?
You should already have access to the portal. Anybody in the town has access to the portal. I'll send you the link.
Thank you.
That's probably what you're missing.
Can you send me a link too?
Sure.
Just so that I have it saved?
Oh, yeah,
Not
there's a
not on
shortcut
the,
link.
not on the,
I'll send it to your BAE.
Yes, if you
I'll
don't
send it to your
mind.
work address for.
that would be great, thank you. I just found out that I can't access from my work computer, which is the only thing I typically use. So now I'll have to get more in tune by using my other outside material to cook in. But the way to do it is to have the portal, so that'll help a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
After we say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Happy holidays.
Enjoy. Again, thanks to everyone for their service. And Jeff, we appreciate you being here. That's a
Thank you,
huge
Jeff.
help. So
Thank you.
we thank you for that. So everybody enjoy Christmas and New Year's with your family and loved ones. Oh, a
Thank
motion
you.
to adjourn.
I'll second that emotion.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? I need a second to that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, and motion adjourn, meeting adjourns at 8:22.
All right, that's a good-